I have often thought how interesting a magazine paper might be written by any author who would, that is to say, who could detail step by step the processes by which any one of his compositions attained its ultimate point of completion. Greetings, Poe fans, and welcome back to one of our degree episodes. Jeannie, what's going on?
Well, we're doing a little special this time. Usually we always have our Poe places at the end of our season, which we're coming upon. But we
Mhm.
decided we'd do a fan favorite. And this fan favorite decided that we were going to delve into the struggles of writers, especially Poe and his world during the 1800s that he was trying to publish, and how difficult it was to face the not having enough food, not having enough for rent, the poverty level, all that, the struggles that writers had then, because many of us who are writers in today know the struggles we have today. So the fan
Absolutely.
favorite decided that, hey, kind of, can we look a little bit into that? So that's what we're going to talk about, is a little bit of the struggles and what was going on and publication and all that wonderful stuff of that time.
And copyright laws, all those fun things. And
Yep.
so later in the episode, before we let you go during this time frame, we will also share out some of the other options and topics that people chose to present to us that we are going to use in season 6, which is coming upon us starting in August. So be
Yeah.
excited. So there are going to be lots
Yay!
of fan favorites that we are going to delve into.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
And
fun.
this is kind of a topic that Jeannie and I have both talked about before about Poe's struggles with being able to make a living in writing and also how he fought for copyright laws. And it is just one of those things within 5 seasons. There's so many different topics about Poe and Poe's influences that uh, we just haven't gotten around to it. So we're really glad that this fan said, "Hey, come on, let's do this."
Yeah, the suggestion was really interesting because we have hit upon a few things over the seasons
Hmm.
that talked a little bit about how his work is being um, in the magazines, and how he did certain things about getting his own work out there, places like when he was during the army, how he was writing, and then
Hmm.
he published after he left. So we've talked a few things about it, but this time we decided to go a little bit more in depth. Now, of course, we couldn't hit upon everything because that's just
No.
a lot
Oh
of going
yeah.
on. Because there's one of the things is that when you look at like the standard of living, we look at standard of living in today's world and it's pretty well defined.
Hmm.
But in those days, they had records, but the records weren't as distinguished as they are today, because standard of living and then occupations weren't qualified as much. Because here's the kicker. If you weren't a blue collar worker, we'll just, I'm using quotations even though you can't see me. Uh, the blue collar workers are those that keep America running, basically.
Yes. Yes.
The hard labor of it
Hmm.
all. Those were well tracked. They were definitely kept in ledgers because they were being paid by the barons, like the shipping barons and the
Hmm.
railroads. And of course they kept track of how much they paid their workers and all that. But those they considered un I don't want to say uneducated, but untrained, were the ones like the authors and the fine artists and those things, because there wasn't really any written out way of keeping track of them.
Well, and what I'm guessing is that if we had access to some of these, especially the magazine and newspaper publishers, they probably kept records of $10 to Edgar Allan Poe, for this story. But that's not, at least on our level of research, accessible.
Yeah, and at the same time, in the early magazines, they weren't paying writers for their work. It was the other way around. The writers were
Yeah.
paying the magazines to publish their work.
Well, and sometimes it just depended on who it was and what kind of recognition that the author had.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
Hmm.
There was so inundated with a lot of people that wanted to get their works out there that some of the, like they did, what do you call it? Like we did the contests and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
they would do like certain editorial things specialized where, send in your poetry or send in your short stories and then they would do serials like what Poe did with
Yeah.
Dupine and those kinds of things. But
And the Journal of Julius Rodman is another serial that he did as well.
yes, but his serial that he was getting paid for that wasn't so much as for
Hmm.
the writing, it was because he was working there.
Right. And where the author was having to pay publishers, it was more for getting published in an actual book, anthology, or a
Mhm.
novel or something like that. And then one thing I want to add in with what Jeannie was talking about when she kind of opened up was thinking about cost of living. One of the things that I found, and we'll link the articles that we used for the research because they gave some really great information, was that the dollar in 1840, if you compare that from 1840 to today's time, it's basically worth 9 times what it was then. So multiply 9 times one for 1840 to now. And so that's a
Yeah,
huge difference.
$9.
I mean, that's a tenth of, you know, it just, I was like, that's a lot.
Yeah, well, and the cost of inflation and everything, because the one of the things you have to add into that also is the dollar that they were getting paid was way below poverty level.
Hmm. Yeah.
And even in today's world, with that 9 times of being $9, it's still going to be way below poverty level. So
Yeah.
artists won't be, are still not getting paid
No.
to make a living. So,
Right. And I was going to say, speaking of poverty level and such, so one of the articles that we used was very interesting because from about 1831, when Poe first put out his uh, Alroth, Tamerlane, and other poems, I believe that's the title.
mhm.
This person that wrote this article basically took from 1831 up until the year Poe died, 1849, and kind of showed how much Poe approximately, he had some records, he had some that he had to estimate, but it basically, when you boiled down all of what Poe made over the lifetime of those years, it was $6,200 in considered then. So if you multiply that times nine, I think, Jeannie, what did we say it ended up being?
Well, we talked about it. It was only going to be like $5,400 actual when we looked at it.
Or
But per,
54,000. 54,000.
yeah. But if we looked at it, it was like less than um like 12 or $1,500 a year
Mm-hmm.
that he was living on, which actually wasn't that bad, but considering everything that he had to take out of that, and he wasn't consistent.
Right.
This would been if he was making a salary of that consistently every year.
And he was not.
Yeah, and that was the problem of it. That when he first published the Tamerlane when he was 18, when he went to Boston, and it was just simply, he simply
Mm-hmm.
didn't put his name to it. It just said a Bostonian. There were only like 12 actual published books of it. And
Yeah.
he had to pay for that himself when he was 18. Nobody
Right.
paid him to publish it. He paid to publish it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for the longest time, he was the publisher because he was the one that was forking over the money.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that estimate was very late in his life type of thing. So even
Mm-hmm.
with as much money as it sounds like, it wasn't consistent, it wasn't reliable, and he was pretty much living in a poverty level all the time, because even though he had a steady job for a while until he completely, he wasn't even able to hold that down anymore
Yeah.
as a
And
literary um, magazine, whatever you call them.
what editor are you
Yeah,
talking about?
thank you.
Editor, yeah.
Yeah.
And so from July of 1835 to October of 1849, he was above the equivalent of the US's 1981. Okay, so just factor that in. That's been a long time ago. 1981 national poverty level only one time. And that was when he was working at Graham's magazine. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. And then when you look at the different periods to kind of show like what he earned for a certain period of time from that same kind of time frame over, it was like around 18 months, 1835 to 1837, it was around $1,323. Longfellow in a similar time period was making 3,000 for the same period. So that just kind of showed how different authors were looked and ways that they got around, not if they were going to publish in a as a book form, how they were able to do that and make money. And Poe did not have the savings in order to do that. And
And
then so
also, you have to think about, like, with Longfellow and Tennyson. Wait a minute. Yeah. Uh,
Emerson, Thoreau,
Emerson. Yeah. And
yeah,
all
Dickens
those.
even, yeah. I mean, even
Yeah.
though
You
Dickens
have to
was
look at
English, yeah.
you have to look at the backing or their social standing,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the same as it is nowadays.
Yeah,
Because if your name and your position is going to carry a lot of weight on how you get things done, so
right.
they were being able to be published. And just like with Lord Byron, you know they were getting published because they had the money, the clout, and the people that they knew
Absolutely.
to get there. And that's one of the things that, even though Poe had his step in as a magazine editor, he did not have the backing to help
No.
him get farther than what he did. Even though he
Right.
met Dickens, even though he had some knowledge and some people that he kind of had rubbed elbows with, basically,
Mm-hmm.
he still did not have that clout that could get him the next step over.
Right. So, and kind of going back, just so our listeners and viewers can kind of hear like what he made for different time periods, moving on to February of 1841 when he joined Graham's magazine, his salary was around $800 a year, and he did get paid supplemental costs, or payments, I should say, for contributing with stories, poems, things like that. And so, over a 13 and one half month he earned $1,177. But then when you look at his salary for 1843, it was around $252 for writing and $50 for lectures that he received. And
Mm-hmm.
so in 1845, this was one where the author had to estimate he earned around $549, but he borrowed against royalties, and he didn't very often get paid royalties, $135. So he ended up owing the publisher $15. In total for that year, he made around $699. And then it gets worse. 1846, this is when he was not working for any of the magazines, so he did not have a job, and so he made $307.43. Again, these are all approximate. 1847, $287.75. 1848, $166.50. And then in 1849, the year he died, $274.75. And so you can kind of see the spiral down from 1847 when Virginia died, that he struggled. He was struggling to help keep her alive from 1845 when she first, let's see, hold on. She was diagnosed with tuberculosis. Was it 1842?
Yeah, they're 42 or
Yeah.
43, I think.
Yeah. And then all up to her death in 1847. And so after her death, it went lower, but then the last year it did go up a little bit.
Yeah, and that last year, as we know, that some of his works, which are more his more popular ones, like Annabelle Lee, and
Well, that was posthumously published.
that's what I'm getting at.
Ah, gotcha.
He wrote them. He wrote them while, at during the last years, because that's why, that was one of the things where he was suffering so much with the grief, that he wrote them when he was in New York after she died.
Hmm.
And yes, even though they were published posthumously, he didn't make any money from them, but they became some of his more recognized and most popular works
Yeah.
that someone else made profit from.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah, so roughly over the course of his life, from the time he was with his poetry, coming from West Point, he had his uh, the other cadets. I was trying to think of the word, cadets pay subscriptions to help him get that published till his death, 1849. Over that course, it was around $6,200. And again, that averages out times nine to around 55,000, something like that.
Mhm.
It's it's incredible to think about that.
Yeah, and that is if he just got straight pay and then that
Right.
he didn't have to pay anything else. But as we
Hmm.
know, he had a lot of obstacles that he had to deal with, some gambling debts, but not as much as many people think.
And that was early
Um,
on. That was early on. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm just saying, even in those early times, he was not getting money. I mean, yes, he was getting paid while he was in the army, but he wasn't in the army long enough to make it worthwhile.
Right.
He had to
Right.
pay for his first publication of poetry, so only 12 of those were published. So that tells you how much he could afford.
Hmm.
Um, so it just shows that even during his time as an editor of a magazine, his most plethora of money, that's not the way I want to say it. His biggest income from writing was while he was working at the magazine and from a magazine, which
Hmm.
actually fits with that time period, because most people, if they did want to publish their books, they had to pay for it
Right. Yeah.
and they couldn't afford it. So that's why they were inundating the magazines to publish their works for them.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And
And he also, the MS Found in a Bottle, it was the Saturday Visitor Award contest that he won, where
Mhm.
he received, let's see, he published it. He actually later published it in 1835 with the magazine The Gift and received $15 for it. And I was trying to, I can't remember. He won $50 for the contest.
Mhm.
And but it's very interesting some of the fees that he received from like in 18 this is just an example in 1838 he sold Ligeia for $10 and Poe considered this one of his best tales up till that point.
Mhm.
And like The Haunted Palace he received $5. It's just it's unbelievable. He in 1839 he did the introduction to the conchologist's first book. He received $50 for that.
Mhm.
And with his name on it, apparently that, sold decently. It's a seashell like textbook.
Yeah. Well, and you also have to understand during the times of the Reformation that was going on, but still the level of literacy that was so low
Yeah.
still in the world, and that was one of the things the publishers, one of the reasons they did not publish a lot that they didn't believe would make them money is because there wasn't enough demand, because there wasn't enough readers.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the education system, most people were, if they weren't seeking higher education, there wasn't like regular schools. I mean, yes, they had implemented them in the school systems, but they weren't standard schools like for everybody to go. It was public, but only for those of a higher class, a social standing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So yes, and mostly boys.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, and that's one of the things the publishers were very adamant about, not just publishing whims, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
of fancy and fantasy and horror and all that, all that stuff, and poetry especially,
Oh
because
yeah.
they were always complaining about how they would be inundated, the magazines especially, with all these people that wanting their poetry to be published, but they were like, so the majority were so bad that they were like, we can't just accept anybody and everybody. We do have
Right.
a level that we have to uh, retain for our readers. So
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And
yeah.
then, so we've mentioned copyright a little bit, and we're gonna kind of, I guess this is the part two
Mhm.
section of our episode here. But what I found very interesting, just because, copyright today, it's an international protection, when you look really get down to it. But
I
back
agree.
when, do what'd you say?
I said it ended up having to be an international protection.
Absolutely. And so back in Poe's time, if you obtained a copyright for your work and you were an American author, you were only protected in America. And the same thing over in Great Britain. If you were an English writer, your copyright protected you in England. And so, one of the things that, especially from what I read from another article, was that English publishers would not really give a lot of credibility to American authors until they saw how their books were selling. And because they could freely take books from American authors who were doing well, they could just take it, print it themselves, and sell it over in Europe. And
Yeah,
I
make
just,
profit from it without
yes.
having to pay the authors.
Exactly. And so I just found it wasn't a shock, but it was just like, wow. It's just it just is so wrong when you think about it in the scheme of today and the laws we have in place. We've come around a long time, a long time.
Well, what was very interesting is that Henry Clay,
Hmm.
who was a congressman, for those that don't know much about history, American history, Henry Clay, not only did he run for president
Hmm.
in 1824, yes, but he was also a congressman that he actually brought that to Congress to have a bill passed to make copyright international.
Oh, very
And
cool.
Congress didn't approve it.
That's a shame.
Yeah, they still kept with the American copyright, but
Hmm.
they wouldn't take it to the point of making it international.
Right. To protect the authors just
Hmm.
wholeheartedly. Yeah, completely.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
it.
because that didn't happen until the International Copyright Act of 1891,
Hmm.
where there was legal copyright protection for foreign authors.
Yeah,
And I mean, from 1824 to 1891, that's a lot of money that publishers were able to, I hate to say steal, but in a way,
they were stealing it because they
yeah,
were taking other people's work and
right.
making profit off of it.
Yeah.
And it
And
worked both ways. It wasn't just the English publishers that were taking American work. American publishers
did the
actually were stealing,
same
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, British work at like Dickens and, Longfellow and all those others.
Hmm.
And they were making profit off of those too.
Yeah. And and this was happening to many authors, like very well-known authors at the time.
Hmm.
Poe had definitely made his name very more notable in 1845 with the publication of The Raven, but then especially after he died as well. But like, again, I mentioned Longfellow was basically creating book plates of his works. So he would sell them to publishers, and it helped the publishers be able to, push out the printed books faster.
Hmm.
And then Emerson would have to pay for publishing the books himself, but he was more well-to-do. And a lot of what I found is that most of the writers at that time had other jobs. Like when you think of Nathaniel Hawthorne, he worked in the customs house. And you had to be an author, you had to have a supplemental income. Otherwise, you would end up like how Poe ended up after he stopped working at the magazines that he did.
Yeah, and honestly, it's no different than it is today
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
to work in any type of creativity, you have to have a supplemental income in order to feed your your first passion, I guess is the one way you can say it.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and that's been the struggle, like even with Shakespeare.
Hmm.
Way back in those days, uh, Shakespeare would not have been as popular as he was if he had not gotten recognition by all the traveling and being accepted in royal courts to,
Yeah.
do his plays and all that. So it's very apropos, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
that the artists, yeah, that the artists who we now revere were no different than the artists of today who are struggling to get their work, accepted
Hmm.
and appreciated and published. Now, even though we have changed a lot, especially in the past 20, say 25, 30 years, maybe 30 years. I don't know. It was more like late 1990s, I guess, is when it kind of started with the
Hmm.
self-publishing of
Yeah.
works and things. But as I was talking to Carmen earlier, the biggest issue is with the amount of art in writing and poetry, prose, whatever you want to call it, even artistry like painting and digital and all that kind of stuff. There is, in essence, too much supply to meet any kind of demand
Right.
because there's
Exactly.
too many choices, I guess is what I'm trying to get to.
Hmm.
That for any one person if they don't have the clout, like we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
like, those and that we've already discussed had to get their names kind of pushed to the top of the list,
Right. Mm-hmm.
the indie authors are fighting tooth and nail, like Poe, when he
Yes.
was fighting to get noticed, to be accepted, and to be appreciated for their work.
Absolutely. And I mean, I can definitely attest to that just because, have I had to put some of my own money into publishing, the Gothic Garden series? Yes. And again, a lot of it too has to do with marketing. Publishers, if you go through a publisher, which you may have to go through 500 query letters and get turned down 500 times before that 501st accepts your book, but that still doesn't guarantee you're going to be a best-selling author. And it just, again, I think Jeannie, you hit it on the nose. It's like things have changed for protection of copyright, but when it comes right down to publishing, it hasn't really changed that much.
No. No, it's just it's more open with the ability to be published, but the reward of being published
Hmm.
is just as much of a struggle as it was in the 1800s. As it,
Absolutely. Yeah. I found in this article that talking about copyright laws and such, I wanted to read a quote that Poe said. And so the first part is just introducing the quote. So Poe in 1845 described the economic literary situation as it affected magazines and magazine contributors. The want of an international copyright law by rendering it nearly impossible to obtain anything from the booksellers or publishers in the way of rumination for literary labor has had the effect of forcing many of our very best writers into the service of the magazines and reviews. Magazines, in turn, Poe continued, suffer severe competition not only from one another, but from piratical publishers who furnish for $8 any four of the British periodicals for a year. It would not do. Poe went on Riley to let our poor devil authors absolutely starve while we grow fat on the good things of which we unblushingly pick the pocket of all Europe, and hence we have magazine publishers who, under certain conditions of good conduct, occasional puffs, and decent subserviency at all times, make it a point of conscience to encourage the poor devil author with $1 or two, more or less as he behaves himself properly. I thought that was a very fitting quote for our episode.
oh yes, I mean it's the essence of exactly what we've been saying,
Yeah.
and
And
the
there, I'm not,
struggle is real, my people.
yes. And there was another quote, I'm not going to read it, but it was talking about puffing and things like that. And the way puffing was used in another sense was it almost felt like the marketing of it. It's like if you don't puff your book, you're not going to get noticed, basically.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we've always talked about of how Poe would go visiting, like they would have nightly gatherings of people around the fireplace, and he would read his works.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things, like I was talking about, literacy was not high on the list. So even if they did any kind of marketing, it was mostly posters that would be posted on the side of buildings or in
Mm-hmm.
magazines or stuff like that. So it wasn't getting to a larger audience.
Yeah.
So the marketing was all about the people that you knew in the
Right.
circles that you frequented of
Mm-hmm.
people who were like-minded literates.
Yes. The literati.
Yeah, the literati.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did not have an in with the right people, you just were an outcast. You were falling behind, and it was like begging, and I hate to bring this in, but it's like Oliver Twist and may I please have some more,
Yeah.
you know. that's kind of like what Poe was trying is he was on the outside and he was begging just to get a chance to be
Yeah,
more.
absolutely. And his writing was just as good as all these other authors at the time, if not better.
Yeah, and it was posthumously that he started getting recognition for his work, but it was all for the
Mhm.
wrong reasons.
Yes, absolutely. We don't want to go
No,
into the Griswold, but
no. But
that's all
and
we'll
I mean,
say.
I hate to say it, that was pretty much a trend for
Hmm.
authors who were trying desperately to be well, to be known, even no matter your artwork.
Right, right.
One like wasn't it Van Gogh sold one painting and it was like the last end of his life.
Yes, it was
And
because he,
then
yes.
yeah, so that's the thing. And but we think about them now and we can't fathom how someone who is so popular and such reverence in today's society
Hmm.
could have struggled the way they did and never got rewarded for their wonderful work.
I know. It just, it's, it's
It's
just a
frightening to
travesty.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. And it just, yeah.
And it would be nice if they would known what was going to happen, that they could get some, reward to know that, oh, I may not get my instant gratification here, but eventually I will be rewarded for my talent.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, most of them never live to see that.
Yeah. And I was going to
And
mention one other like monetary piece in
mhm,
1845 when of a publication of Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque, they he signed for 8 cents a copy as a royalty. He would receive 8 cents for every one sold. They sold 1,500 copies. He was at the height of his career, and
mhm,
that's all he saw from that. And so he
mhm.
he obtained his copyright, but that's it. And that they did not print any other ones at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so sad to know that
Hmm.
he was the epitome of the struggling artists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And while he, for the most part, except for the last few years of his life, he did hold down a job. It was, different jobs at the different magazines and such. But it's like if he had been able to not get wrapped up into some of his ideals and beliefs where he would quit one of the magazines for different reasons or, get fired and things like that. If he had been able to hold down a steady job, would he have published more because he would have had possibly the savings in order to back himself?
I don't know. It's one of those mysteries like his death and everything else that
Yeah.
we'll never probably know.
Yeah. But I truly believe, though, too, we have the writings of Poe based on the life he led and was given.
Mhm.
And if he had taken different paths, we would not have some of these writings. They'd be very different.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed this before. It's all about choices
Hmm.
that are made for him or made by him that
Yeah.
led him to certain epiphanies
Yeah.
or writings that we revere in today's society that may never have come to light if he
Yeah.
hadn't have experienced those tragedies or hiccups,
Yeah.
obstacles, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we just
Oh,
have
yeah.
to
Yeah.
can't
That
really
thing.
go with the what ifs anymore. It's just all about
Absolutely.
what we know.
Well, we also can say thank you, Mr. Poe, for fighting for equitable copyright laws that
Mhm.
eventually came around to protect authors because any little bit that he fought for helped in that the initial like overall changes that were made.
Yeah,
To me, anybody that stands up and does that, it goes into, he may have not been alive to see it, but he somewhere with someone, just kind of paying it forward, I guess. I fully believe that he did have a tiny little hand in helping to make those changes eventually.
yeah, he was one of the ones that started laying down the tracks to
Yeah.
make the travel time to get where it needed to be. So,
hmm Absolutely. So I think, Jeannie, we were going to share out some of the other topics from
mhm,
our fan poll. Uh,
right,
are you ready for me to share out some things?
absolutely.
All right. So uh, we have our Poe Unplugged episodes kind of planned out through August. And so what we're planning on doing is one of the suggestions, actually, we got two votes on this. So for September, we're going to read A Tale of the Ragged Mountains and discuss that on the September Poe Unplugged.
Oh,
uh, a movie called The Raven that came out actually this year. I've seen it, but I'm not going to say anything about it at this point. But we're going to fit that into a Poe Unplugged episode for season 6. We had Poe Places, a suggestion, post time in South Carolina. We've talked about Poe in the Army where he was stationed in South Carolina, but we haven't talked about just deeper into maybe not all the things about the Army, but more about just Poe as a person in that area. And then we had a suggestion for horror for true crime. And so we've alluded to that with one of his detective stories, but we're going to go deeper into that. This is all for season 6. So these are things to look forward to. With science fiction, The Race to Mars was suggested. So we're going to try to fit that in. For science, we had two suggestions. And these are kind of topics that are very relevant in today's world. The
mhm,
first one was people feeling isolated, modern psychology, and its acknowledgement of anxiety or depression. And then the other topic was the ramifications of technology. So that'll be very interesting to tie that in. Let's see, we had a suggestion. We kind of put this with surrealism, the crumbling of powerful institutions, and we kind of are going to tie that into dystopian s- type of things.
right.
And then with literature, what we're talking about today is technically we're putting that in literature because it affects all of Poe's work.
Yes, and so this one is the only one that's going to be in this season. All
Correct.
the other
Yes.
ones are going to be part of season 6.
Yes. But we just wanted to share out these were all fantastic ideas. And this is a topic that Jeannie and I have wanted to do for a while. And
Mhm.
we want to thank our fans for pushing that into our purview.
Exactly. So if any other fans have any other suggestions that along the way, we are always open. So you can email us at 6degreesofpoe@gmail.com.
Yes, absolutely. And stay tuned. July 1st, we will be announcing our Poet Like Poe poetry contest winners.
Our 2026 winners, both adult and youth category.
Yes.
So it's coming up quick.
I know it. I can't believe it. The year is
Yeah.
halfway through pretty much.
Well, it is halfway through because we're just finishing the 6th month. So
I know.
let's not think about that.
Yes.
So,
So
and
on
on
that
that
note,
note, we
we
are
are
Poe.
Oh, out.
I propose, therefore, in the present paper, which I had some idea of calling Memorandum to Serve for the Literary History of America, to give a detail of those important, yet feeble and tottering first steps by which, at length, I attained the high road to the pinnacle of human renown.